Okay, I just started the recording.
So currently, Ms. Armstrong, you are our one participant. So we're just going to give folks a little more time to join us this evening. But we really appreciate you being here and being here right on the dot.
Hi, Hannah.
It's good to see you again.
Good to see you.
We're getting some more.
Yeah, welcome, Monica.
Good evening to those who just joined. We're going to give folks a minute or two more to join us, and then we will jump in. We are very thankful that you're here with us this evening.
And welcome, Betsy, somewhere out there.
So I think we'll start things off at 6:03 on your clock, Chris. You can kick us off.
Sounds good.
And with folks, whoever would like to, we'll do a quick round of introductions for those who would like to introduce themselves, and then we'll jump into the content.
All right, so I'll get it started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Community Facilities Working Group Meeting number 2. My name is Chris Rabasco. I'm a planning associate with Michael Baker International. Just a quick reminder that this meeting will be recorded and posted eventually on the group's webpage. So if you'd like to review any of the information, you can find it there, and anyone that isn't attending today can also take the time to watch it. Like I said, I'm a planning associate, Michael Baker, along with my colleague Hannah Clark, who's here on the call. We've been working with South Whitehall Township staff to facilitate Phase 4 of the 2021 Comprehensive Plan update. And today we'll focus on subject matter expert sourced information, tools, and best practices from Lehigh Valley Planning Commission. Before we get started, I think it'd be a good idea to quickly go around and do some introductions again. Hannah, would you like to start?
Great. Yes. Thank you, Chris. And again, welcome all. My name is Hannah Clark. I work with Chris. I'm part of Michael Baker International, and I am working alongside Chris to facilitate these working group meetings. And thank you for joining us this evening. And please know that if you're joining and you weren't able to be there for meeting number 1, we did send out the recording, and we really encourage folks to come to whatever meetings work for your schedule. So we're really happy you are here this evening. I'm going to pass it off to our South Whitehall colleagues, Dave Manhart.
Hi, I'm Dave Manhart, Director of Community Development. I was in the utilities meeting for meeting 1, so interested to hear what we have to discuss for community facilities.
Maybe Greg next.
Sure. My name's Greg Adams. I'm South Whitehall Township Planner. I was with you guys for meeting 1 of community facilities. It's good to see you all back, and I'm looking forward to an interesting presentation tonight.
Great, thanks, Greg. Now we can go to our SMEs from LVPC. I see first on my list Samantha Smith.
Hi, thank you. I'm Samantha Smith. I'm a Chief Community Planner at LVPC. Happy to be here this evening.
Jeffrey Reese.
Hi, Jeff Reese, Director of Environmental Planning with the LVPC.
And Sue Rockwell.
Yes, Sue Rockwell, Senior Environmental Planner with the LVPC.
Great, we thank 3 of you for joining, and now we'll go to Marcia.
Hi, I'm Mark Armstrong, and I'm just a South Whitehall resident.
Great, thanks for joining. Monica.
Hi, I'm Monica Hodges. I'm a South Whitehall resident. Thank you.
Great, and Betsy, if you're there. I don't think so. So again, thanks everyone for joining. We appreciate your input as always. And before we jump into some of the materials from LVPC, we're going to do a quick little prioritization exercise to summarize some of the key takeaways from meeting 1 to ground us as we move here into building out some recommendations. So what this will involve is going to a website called menti.com. I'm going to put it up on the screen quick if I can find my share button. Here we go. And up on your screen, you should see a slide. And right at the top, there's a web address, www.menti.com. And we'd like everyone to visit that site and type in this code, which is 37087560. And once you're there, you'll see a summary of some of the key takeaways from our discussion on community facilities in meeting 1. And what we'd like you to do is quickly go through a ranking exercise on your screen. And we'll see some of the responses come in live, and we'll save some of the input so that it can be shared. And this will help us build as we go towards recommendations and help us prioritize as facilitators what we want to focus on when we get to our discussion later in the meeting. So we'll give you a minute or 2 to hopefully navigate yourself to Mentimeter, and then we'll move on.
Great. And you just can open any browser either on your laptop, iPad, or your phone, and just put in www.menti.com. It will prompt you to put in the code that's on the screen, and then it will be much easier to read what's on there, because when you're either on your phone or your browser, they will be significantly larger. And this, again, is just a way for us to give for everyone here who's participating a sense of where priorities are, where, when you concluded your meeting last week, we recorded some key takeaways. So what is rising to the top for you? What is maybe secondary in your considerations? And if you're having any issues using Menti, please either just tell us, unmute yourself, or drop it in the chat.
Right, and if for some reason you can't see, and hopefully you remember from meeting 1, I guess I could just read some of them quick. Inventory, EMS services and equipment, community input. I see Monica's having some trouble. Look at the chat.
It's okay. Chris, why don't you keep reading through them, and I'll work with Monica.
Okay. Inventory, EMS services, and equipment. Oh, there we go. We're getting some responses. Community input on new park acquisitions. Expanding our great park system in a sustainable way. as we grow, the ability to maintain what we have and ensure first responders have the support they need to accommodate our growth. Better systems to compare township averages with national averages, ensuring facilities access and service access to the less developed areas of the township, and existing maintenance should be a focus instead of always focusing on expansion. So again, those were pulled from the discussion in meeting 1 and were basically taken directly from the Jamboard. So good to see we got some responses in there. Now, as you can see, number 1 right now is expanding our park system in a sustainable way.
Yes, and Monica, and if anyone else is having trouble, basically when you go into menti.com, you put in the code that's right on the screen, 37087560, and then it will ask you first to say choose number 1, and it will give you all 7 options, and it will say choose number 6 of the 7. Number 1 will be, and then so on and so forth till you get to the 7th. So if you're able to access it and go through it quickly, that is great. And we can also hear from you if you participated and want to share some of your thoughts. And again, this is just to help us be reminded of where we were from last week and how this can assist in facilitating discussion with our folks from Lehigh Valley Planning Commission and as we think through recommendations.
And Monica, if you're having trouble, I can put in for you if you'd just like to. Oh,
Monica, when you hit the choice arrow at the right end of the where it says select an option, if you select that and a box drops down, but you don't see any options, move your cursor and hover over some of the points in the box. I had the same problem, and it didn't show me the option until I actually put my cursor over top of it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Greg. That helped.
Sure.
Okay, sorry.
No, please,
No problem.
sorry, we
That took me a
appreciate
little
your
while,
guys'
too.
patience. So, Marcia, were you able to vote, or would you like to just give us your thoughts and we can put it in for you?
Done. I did. I
Oh,
voted.
perfect. Thank you. And we know there's a lot of us on the call, but we don't want to wait anything. Oh, perfect. There we go.
I guess I forgot to hit submit. But
Oh. I know the ranking one is a little more involved than some of the other live polling, but it looks like everyone's participated. So Chris, do you want to read us off where we landed?
Sure. We landed with our expanding our great park system in a sustainable way, number 1, and inventorying EMS services and equipment, number 2. I think that's pretty reflective of our conversation last week. And then following after that, as we grow, the ability to maintain what we have and ensure first responders have the support they need to accommodate our growth. Ensuring facilities access and service access to less developed areas of the township. Community input on new park acquisitions was 5th, existing maintenance being a focus instead of expansion, 6th, and comparison tools for national averages, 7th. So again, we thank everyone for their responses, and with that, we'll head back over to the workbook to discuss meeting 2 and our goals for this evening's meeting. I'm confusing myself with all these screens. So here we go. And like I said, today we'll focus on subject matter sourced information, tools, and best practices from Lehigh Valley Planning Commission. We'll have a chance to discuss the ways to address current problems for community facilities in South Whitehall Township, hopefully moving towards identifying recommendations with SMEs. Our goals for today, like I said, review and discuss SME source data, learn about best tools and practices, and identify initial recommendations. Our our hope our hoped outcome for tonight will be to create a high level list of initial recommendations that will be prioritized and built out during our next meeting, which is Thursday, August 5th. And with that, I'll stop sharing and I'm going to turn it over to Samantha Smith from LVPC.
I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Reese.
Oh, sorry.
Can I turn it over to Sue? No, I'm just kidding. So,
Jeff,
Start if
you're
you
gonna
want.
start.
So thank you. So we want to just start off with, in terms of future LV and the construction of future LV and how that relates to community facilities. Really, you can't talk about future LV or any comprehensive plan without an understanding that having an understanding and an intent in terms of where development should be located throughout a given area. In our case, obviously, Lehigh and Northampton counties, including all the 62 municipalities. But then in your case for South Whitehall Township, where that should take place. And so the first thing we're going to talk about is South Whitehall Township from the perspective of future LV, and this serves the future land use plan. And the key part about this is that as you're planning for community facilities, the first question is, well, where is land development going to take place throughout the community? Where do we anticipate having additional needs in terms of housing for anticipated population, in terms of employment and where that's going to be located, in terms of facilities, and what are the areas of the township are we perhaps not looking to have any form of intense development? It might be reserved for farmland preservation, for example. And so really step one in the process is trying to identify where do we think we're going to grow, and where do we think then all of our development is going to be located? And then how do we begin the process of understanding what we need to do to provide community facilities to serve that growth? And so again, we have population and employment forecasts. We have an idea of where the growth can occur. And then we can begin the process of looking around to see, are we going to be, or how do we get to the point of being adequately served with emergency management services and with other types of facilities, schools, and so forth. So it begins with, again, this process of identifying where do we believe that it's the most appropriate to grow. And those decisions are based on some fundamental parts of comprehensive planning in terms of where are existing sewage facilities, public sewage facilities located? Where is public water located? Where are our most competent transportation facilities located that can support this kind of urban type growth? And so we begin with that process of evaluating where all those community utilities are present that are best able to support growth, and that we make sure that those utilities, so I know we're talking about facilities mostly in this conversation, but it does have to begin with a map and utilities. So as we're able to provide those utilities and maintain those into the future, where does it tell us are our best opportunities to grow? And then we can, again, begin the process of figuring out how to serve this area with the necessary community facilities. So one thing I would ask Samantha to go back on is what came up on the screen first, which is a rendering within Future LV. And this is just one of the renderings in Future LV, but it's also borrowed from South Whitehall Township. So this is an area of Walworth Avenue in terms of not what it looks like today, but what it could potentially look like. And this gets to one of the tools that we have available through the comprehensive planning process is using visualizations to help people understand how to transform perhaps the existing circumstances into what it might be in the future and provide additional public spaces, additional bike and walking facilities, improved transit facilities, while still accommodating all the other needs for transportation built into that. So now I'll turn it over to Sam or Sue as they want to fill in behind that.
Sure, I would just building on what you're saying with this image and this being a community facilities discussion. I think a trendy name for them is pocket parks, but the kind of smaller park concept, similar to what's behind these two folks running right here. In this conversation and as we envision what the future of South Whitehall Township looks like, one thing that just came up as a major priority was how do we maintain and expand our current system in a sustainable way, and this is a way to do that, right? This is like more bang for your buck. You're improving the transportation corridor, you're improving this environmental sustainability, and then you're also providing passive recreation spaces for people.
And Sam, if you could also go to the open space plan within Future LV.
So this is the open space plan here. The open space plan, did you want to talk, Jeff, or do you want me to go?
Go right ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
The open space plan from Future LV, remember, is a regional plan, right? And so the parks, let me see if, yeah, the parks that are in Future LV are existing and proposed regional parks. So it's not going to include every park in your network. But as a recommendation at a municipal planning level, your open space plan should definitely include every park in your network and every park you'd love to have in your network. One thing that we could see when we were looking at the general land use plan is this character preservation area that also shows up here in the Parks and Rec plan along this future trail, which I believe is the Jordan Creek Trails. Also important to you all as it is to the region. Did I get it all, Jeff?
I think so. I will add to that in terms of the Future LV being an umbrella plan, one of the things that is accomplished besides that are looking at these individual subject areas in terms of subject area plans, and two of them that we can talk about to the extent anybody would need to is that we worked with Lehigh County to create a livable landscapes plan. Which is a park, recreation, open space, agricultural, and historic lands plan. And so as much as Future LV provides the broad framework in terms of where various types of land use and land development are appropriate, and does provide a park plan, we certainly get more in detail with that, with a functional plan associated with livable landscapes, and continue to do that with an additional plan looking at trail facilities and bicycle facilities, walking facilities within the Walk Roll LV plan just adopted last year. And so Future LV is the umbrella that pieces the basic concepts together, and then these individual functional plans help us add depth and further understanding to that for individual components of Future LV.
So that's something you all have as well. I think I have them brought up here. You've got a master plan for the Covered Bridge Park. You've got a joint Parks and Rec plan with North Whitehall Township. Those sorts of kind of more specific plans that fall under your umbrella comprehensive plan should be considered, though this one is probably warranting update as well. Making sure what's in here reflects what's in your comp plan and vice versa, and then updating these more specific plans as appropriate.
And one other more specific plan that is very worthy of note is in terms of emergency services, there is a regional hazard mitigation plan.
Yep.
Yep. Oh, so you want to continue?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh.
We're seeing natural and non-natural disasters increasingly lead to loss of life and injuries and property damage all across the U.S. And we can expect that climate change is going to intensify those impacts. And because of this, emergency management will become a greater priority for municipal governments, including South Whitehall. But through planning for these disasters, you can help municipalities better manage land use and growth and environmental resources to mitigate those impacts. And so, as Jeff said, there is a Lehigh Valley Hazard Mitigation Plan. It was approved in 2018 by the federal and state emergency management agencies, and was prepared in partnership with all 62 municipalities, and all 62 municipalities did adopt the plan. The plan identifies the hazards that can impact the region and assesses the risks associated with those hazards, but also includes actions that each community identified to mitigate the impacts of the hazards. And by implementing those as funding allows and keeping hazard mitigation planning up to date, municipalities can become more resilient and sustainable. This is an ongoing planning process. The hazard mitigation plan has to be updated every 5 years, and the next one will have to be completed by 2023. In addition, the township's current comprehensive planning effort provides an opportunity to integrate hazard mitigation planning into the comp plan by guiding future growth and development, including community facilities away from areas of known hazards. And looking at your comprehensive plan guiding principles in the workbook, hazard mitigation planning matches pretty well with several of those, which align with future LV, with 3 of the 5 future LV goals, as well as a number of policies and actions under those goals.
So we could continue. Is there anything more you'd like us to add to that, or is that a good kind of starting point for the conversation?
And I just want to quickly add for those, I've been dropping in the links to the various plans and maps. So the map that's currently on your screen, and you're seeing this as the folks from LVPC walk you through that these are interactive maps. So if you want to join them and zooming in and looking at a specific area or direct, Samantha, I don't know if you're the navigator or whoever
Yes.
is navigating, but
I am navigating.
if you would like to reference either of the maps that were shared from Future LV or any of the plans, I've dropped those links in the chat, and we'll be obviously providing those as a follow-up from the meeting. So sorry, I just wanted to jump in, let folks know that was there.
I would add one more thing, Jeff, since we talked about this earlier today. One, and to quote Jeff, one of the best tools that the MPC provides for planning and development in Pennsylvania is the official map. And South Whitehall has an official map. In fact, it's a 3-part map. The part of the map is included in the workbook, so you all should be hopefully familiar with it. There's a community facilities, conservation land, historic resources, and transportation facilities component of this map. This map should, again, just like your smaller, more specific plan should tie under that umbrella comprehensive plan. We want to make sure also that the official map reflects your goals and your comprehensive plan. So, if the comprehensive plan envisions, connecting the park system more robustly, then maybe a recommendation resulting from the comp plan is updating the official map as necessary, so that you can begin working towards your ultimate goal in a more supportive manner.
And just to build on that, thank you very much for bringing those up, Sam. I mean, the official map is probably not a very well understood tool under the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code, perhaps especially to the general public, but it's not, for example, just an official map of the road network or whatever you might think. This is a tool. And as Sam has already said, it gives a municipality an opportunity to express some of their interests, whether that be in park facilities, additional municipal facilities, any number of different things, conservation areas that the municipality is interested in. You can express those, and it provides some legal standing in terms of trying to have those be implemented longer term. I mean, exactly how that happens is kind of an involved discussion, but basically it allows the municipality to show on a map that's adopted by the municipality what they're thinking in terms of future planning for any number of different facilities, but certainly including community facilities, and then have some measure of ability to implement that working with property owners down the line. So it's just really an important tool that municipalities can use to get the types of things that they're hoping to have as far as, in this case, community facilities going forward.
And if I may just jump in as a facilitator, we last week was all about existing conditions, and the official map I think came up in almost all of our working groups because it's such an important tool. And I know Dave and Greg can speak more to how it came out of the 2009 plan, but it's just, I think we really appreciate you diving into that and helping us all, or at least, understand how it connects into the comprehensive plan recommendations is a huge piece. So thank you.
Jumping in, this is Chris again. Are there any more tools or anything that you'd like to share before we jump into a quick Q&A to go over some of the SME data?
Yeah.
Well, I would add
Okay.
I would add in terms of, additional tools. One of the things is in the functional plans, and especially talking about park and recreation facilities. I saw in some of the information that there's interest in perhaps comparing how South Whitehall Township is doing in terms of national standards and things like that. And in the Livable Landscapes Plan, we took a pretty deep dive looking at those types of information in terms of acres of parkland of different types per 1,000 residents, and also in terms of service areas associated with that. And so I think that's a really good source of information in terms of those kinds of national standards types of things. Although I have to say that the folks that create those national standards are really interested in using another type of tool moving forward, which is a survey tool, and actually surveying the residents of the community to find out the kinds of facilities that they're interested in, and then use that to inform what the municipality may be interested in doing in terms of moving forward with that. So it's not just the only tool available would be these national standards and what have you, but also getting the opinions of the residents of the community in terms of the types of activities interested in doing and where they can go and find them. And one of the things also, in terms of looking at this information, just thinking about parks, for example, or trails, that for the most part, it could be that the residents likely don't need to care very much about who owns those facilities. Is that a township facility? Is it a county facility? It's really just if something's close to home to them and they can use it, then that's what really matters. And so that's one of the changes also in terms of looking at all that data, kind of gets away from just the facilities that the municipality provides to looking at all the different opportunities that residents have to recreate on facilities that are provided by others. And so it's taking just a broader, more holistic view in terms of the recreational opportunities available to residents.
Great, and I think your point on the survey tool kind of builds on an additional takeaway from our conversation last week was, really the lack of input, for example, in meeting one, and how we can, get more input from a wider range of the population in the township, and, looking at more engagement tools, I think, is a tool that everyone should keep in mind. Anything else from LVPC or anyone? For that matter.
One of
May
the
I
things
speak?
that- oh, yes.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead,
Go ahead.
please do.
One of the the things about the survey, I think that's a really good idea, taking a survey, but keeping it really simple for people. I know the survey for our comp plan had pictures of different things, and people can interpret those pictures differently. Some may see a single family dwelling, some may see, oh, that's a multifamily residence, and may not really actually understand what the picture is showing. So I think if we do go forward and do any kind of survey, it should be just as simple as possible. What is important to you? 1 through 10, in what order are these things important to you? What exactly are you looking for? Or if there is a picture, how do you interpret this? This is what this is. How do you interpret it, and what do you think about it? But I think the simpler, the better. But I think a survey, a citizen survey, is the way to go, not just for this comp plan, but I think every so often throughout time, yearly, whatever, just to have a pulse on where we're going, how happy people are, what we're doing right as a township, what people want to see, because that's all dynamic. It changes. It's doesn't stay the same. Thank you.
I know that's coming up a lot too in our conversations across all working groups is shortening the window in terms of when we look at the comp plan and update. That'll give, along with any update, would come more opportunity for the public to give their input and for the township to put surveys out into the public. And so I think that's going to work its way in to a lot of recommendations. I think where we see fit. So anything else to keep the Q&A going with LVPC before we jump into the overall discussion?
I would just add one other thing, which is you mentioned that in terms of the update timeframe. Future LV for the first time is a combination of the traditional comprehensive plan with our long-range transportation plan. Without going into a lot of the details there, one of the things that benefits us in that process is the need to update the document every 4 years. That's not what I'm suggesting the municipality needs to do, but rather it is something that from the regional perspective, since a lot of things are changing pretty quickly. And so we see that as an advantage for us in terms of more frequent updates associated with the entire document.
Sure.
So one of the things that came up in the housing group that ties to the parks, and Jeff, you kind of hinted to it, is talks about service areas and proximity to parks and what that means for values. There was a report done, is it Return on Environment?
Yes.
Kind of talks about the importance of parks. I wonder if you could add anything or think that might have any relevance to this conversation.
Oh, sure, it certainly does. In terms of, and we looked at a lot of things within that report that had to do with, the benefits that nature and open spaces provide to the residents of the Lehigh Valley or a community in terms of things that nature just gives us, like purifying the air from trees that benefits everyone in terms of cooling impacts, of reduction in greenhouse gases, removal of contaminants from the air. But what Dave is referring to there is we also took a look at it from the perspective of the value to residential properties of being within a quarter mile of protected open space. So doesn't have to be just parks. It could be preserved farms. It could be any type of protected open space, but certainly including parks. And it was about a $14,000 benefit in terms of enhanced property value, because that's what people want. They want to be close to those kinds of facilities and are interested or able to pay a premium in terms of property values, or even if you're not paying it, your property's accruing that value of just being there next to that protected space or to that park. So yeah, that's one of the studies that was done for the first time in 2014, looking at the natural system benefits associated with our open spaces, and that was one of the key aspects to it, along with enhanced revenue associated with outdoor recreation, which was a huge part of that study as well, just looking to see how much people in a community use open space resources for recreation and how that translates into pretty incredible, actually, benefits to the economy, when looking at it from the Lehigh Valley, but that would be the perspective just in the municipality as well.
Great.
And I think just to build off of what Chris was saying, we did want to open up if there are folks who are on the call have any general questions as to what LVPC has presented and wants to kind of jump into those questions before we go into our discussion and start working towards brainstorming recommendations. So if anyone wants to unmute, or if you're muted, just speak up. Or drop it into the chat if you have any kind of clarifying questions for our subject matter experts here. And I guess I would just also ask Chris, as the facilitator from the meeting one, is there anything that was coming up as a question that maybe you guys didn't get a chance to dive into, or that we could hear from Jeff or Samantha or Sue?
Right. I was going to see if it came up from anyone first, but I'll kind of want to lean more into some of the hazard mitigation tools and practices. I think it came up a lot in our first discussion. Worries about some of the EMS or fire services and concerns over their access to equipment. They're not really sure. Full inventories. There's also concern about being able to reach all points of the township because I think it was the opinion of the group that the services might be spread a little bit thin. So if you could touch on any tools or practices to work those into comp plan recommendations, whether it be consulting plans like the hazard mitigation plan, or how we could look to build out a recommendation for those aspects, I think would be beneficial for the group and building off of last week.
So I know Sue's going to jump in because it's hazard mitigation, but before she does, I think this goes back to, again, the land use plan and what the anticipated development pattern looks like throughout the municipality. So then you can start thinking through that in terms of what are your EMS needs and how do you accomplish them, looking at how the people and employment and so forth are going to be laid out within the community. And, to that extent, the types of equipment that are needed for different kinds of settings, so more urban settings, and now potentially with some taller buildings coming into certain communities that, is your fire equipment able to handle those types of things? Do you have the ability to provide fire flows in your rural communities, and how do you deal with those? And so again, that's where I think the building block is the land use plan, where you can then begin to look at the community and see what do you anticipate the needs to be in various parts of the municipality in terms of fire or EMS requirements. And then also, what are your goals in terms of, we've had conversations with folks across the valley in terms of how they're able to provide these services. The kind of the volunteer aspect of many of those things is getting troublesome because it's difficult to maintain the level of volunteers you would like to have. But not just that, what are your goals in terms of response times? So what is an acceptable for your community response time for different types of things? And then how do you go about building the capabilities you need to meet those kinds of requirements? So again, from a general perspective, in terms of just starting from the land use plan, those are things you can begin to piece together, just seeing the extent of different types of land uses across the community into the future.
Something else to consider, though it doesn't actually resolve the issue, but South Whitehall Township isn't the only place that has an emergency service volunteerism problem. It's, volunteerism is just overall declining. It's certainly a valley-wide issue, and I would feel confident saying it's probably an issue throughout the state. So it's something that a lot of municipalities are working to try to figure out how to resolve. So South Whitehall Township is not on its own. And that could be a resource as well. Maybe there are others a little bit further ahead in the process, perhaps, that are working to try to resolve it. The other
And-
thing I would add
oh.
is, sorry.
Oh, no, sorry. Go ahead.
I think the LVPC motto this year is begin with fact-based optimism, and certainly wanting to get an inventory of resources and capital availability is a great place to start. You can't know where your needs are unless you really have a good understanding of what your needs are, what you have, and what you don't have. So I personally thought it was great to see that in looking at the information in the Jamboards and in the workbook. Go ahead, Sue. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Another option is to think about is shared services. If a community doesn't have all the equipment it needs, or can't afford to buy a new truck or something, can you enter into an agreement with an adjacent community to share, if they have that equipment that you need, can you share that? So that's another thought.
And just to build on that, Sue, I mean, this is kind of the nature of emergency services, is that communities help each other. Communities have long helped each other, just responding to things or whatever the needs are. Those individuals and those agencies are used to pitching in and doing what they can. And so this is the kind of thing that can be looked at broader than South Whitehall Township, looking at the communities that surround you and their ability, and just collectively the ability of all of these agencies to help support and assist each other in meeting all the needs that crop up.
Great. Well, I'm glad we got that expert input on some of the, what was a major theme from last week, and we spent a lot of time on it. So I'm glad that everyone got to hear your thoughts. If there isn't anything else from anyone, I think we can head over to Jamboard to start our discussion template for this meeting. I'm going to post the link to the Jamboard in the chat, and everyone can click on that, and I'll share my screen to quickly run over some of the controls. Can everyone see it up on my screen?
Yes.
So just as a reminder, we're going to go through a couple of questions, and you're going to have to navigate through them on your own screen by clicking the next arrow by the time it comes to move on, just so you don't stay on the same question. I know that was a bit confusing last time. And the main function that you're going to use is over here on the left control panel. It's the fourth icon down, called Sticky Note, and you can click on that and type in any input that you see fit, and just click Save, and it'll post and populate to this screen here, and that'll give us some items to discuss. So with that, our first discussion question for community facilities is, what do you think is working well now in South Whitehall Township? And we'll give everyone a minute or so to put in some sticky notes, and then we'll kick off for discussion. And my colleague Hannah Clark is going to help me facilitate some of these discussion questions. So thanks to her.
Great. And just for those who maybe, if you're having any trouble with the Jamboard or you just want to speak up, we'll capture your thoughts and put them up there. So feel free to just start sharing your thoughts about what's working well when it comes to community facilities. And, we know that covers a large area: parks, emergency services, schools, libraries. Community facilities are really far ranging, and we know this is a big topic. So where are you seeing systems work at the moment? And again, feel free to unmute yourself and speak up, or add things on the board or drop it in the chat. Great. So I think similar to kind of from the key takeaways priority, we're seeing parks are seen as doing pretty well here. referencing the library. And, something else that's included under community facilities, and Dave and our SMEs from LVPC can speak to this, is also things like the Cedar Brook Nursing Home, which we know is a county-owned facility, but it's in South Whitehall Township. We know it's expected to be renovated in a significant way. So I think South Whitehall has seen a lot of advancement in some of the community facilities since the 2009 plan. And also, I would just add in, if we do include schools under this, obviously the school board and the school district is separate from the township, but getting input on that in relationship to the comp plan. And we'll welcome Dave's input, or Greg, or Jeff, Samantha, or Sue, and how that relates to some of the comp plan recommendations. In terms of schools and how the school facilities intersect with community facilities recommendations.
I think that's another opportunity, like we were talking about service sharing with the EMS, get in the schools, if it's possible, working with the schools to share facilities and connect facilities. That increases usage across the board, and builds a little bit more community support of all of the facilities as well.
And it looks like someone added in good relationship with Parkland School District for shared facilities. Does anyone do you want to expand on that specific one in terms of shared facilities? I think that's an interesting concept that was brought up, maybe in terms of some recommendations, or again, highlighting what works well, or if you want to speak to anything else you put up here.
Well, I can say that one was mine. And that was after 20 years of working with Parkland on a number of things. I worked with them on the Park and Rec Board. They let us use a lot of their facilities, including their wonderful pools up at Parkland High School, some of their fields. And I know we work back and forth with them on a lot of things. So I think we have a great relationship with Parkland School District when it comes to the facilities.
And I could just add our whole summer program. So the Parks and Rec Department has a summer day camp program, and they're all run at the schools, primarily the elementary schools. And it's a super successful program. If Mike was here, Mike Kokitz, he could explain a lot more about it, but I know they always have a waiting list every year. Super popular program. And it's just another example of how the township works with the school and the school works with the township. So we have a really good relationship with them.
Great. So, Chris, do you think we should move to the next question? Are there any final thoughts and kind of what's working well?
Sure, we can move on to the next one. The next one is, what are the problem areas in South Whitehall Township? This could be problem areas within a specific cross section of community facilities, whether it be libraries or parks. Also geographic areas. Anything that you think we should consider as we go towards building our recommendations. I assume some of the EMS inventory and fire services may come up here again as well. If we can maybe pinpoint some areas that might need our consideration. I'll give everyone else a minute or so to start populating this with some Post-its.
One thing with regards to the emergency management, I think coordination with them is super important, and something, because I suspect they already have inventories as part of their process, and kind of bringing them into the fold would certainly help coordinate some of the planning moving forward.
I would add to that, David, in terms of the hazard mitigation plan, that there's 25 different hazards that are studied in there, and for each one, there's an assessment of the risk that the community faces, whether it be from floods or pandemics or what have you. Then the second part is a capability assessment. What are the existing capabilities that are available at the county or municipal level in terms of dealing with that particular hazard and managing or mitigating those risks already? And to the extent that the capabilities need to be or can be enhanced, then that's the basis for the recommended actions within the hazard mitigation plan. So I was really making all that as saying that basically because the capabilities associated with dealing with various risks that communities have are covered within that plan. And that's a critical part of doing that. And again, I think to your point, it's really important that the county is responsible for a lot of that coordination, working with each of the municipalities in terms of emergency management also.
Great. And for the folks who are joining us who all of the South Whitehall residents are, if you, again, please feel free to speak up and we'll capture your thoughts. Really to look at, where we're seeing problems and, what we want to do next is how can we take these problems and start to think of the solutions and the recommendations in the context of the comp plan. So I think just to summarize what was just added, we have highlighting traffic as a problem area that affects quality of life, also affects the feel and character of the township, and how the current facilities are have a character that the person who wrote this said is not an urban feel. And please feel free if this was yours and you want to expand upon that. We definitely, I think it'd be great to hear those thoughts and others related to maybe some of the challenges. And again, Chris, this could be a good opportunity as the facilitator to hear some, maybe if you want to.
Right. I was just going to.
Pain points that came up.
Right. I was going to jump in and say, reflective of some earlier conversation that we had around problems with community input. I know there was concern last week about what land we're choosing to acquire for park space and what uses are going to be intended for them. I think it came up specifically in a conversation around Kohler Ridge, but I think that's something maybe that we'd want to discuss further is better ways to get public input, not only on where to expand our park system, but for which uses, passive, active, things along those lines.
And just a benefit of having the regional perspective from LVPC here is where are some pain points or challenges that you see as you're working alongside communities and multi-municipal plans or the comprehensive plans you're reviewing when it comes to community facilities, or are you seeing I think one of those, which I don't know if we want to put up here, if folks agree, is the decline of volunteerism and how that could potentially affect some of the emergency services. Maybe we want to put that in with a question mark to carry it forward. But I guess, folks, are there others that you're hearing regionally are kind of coming up in the community facilities space?
Well, I guess I can chime in here with kind of a plug for the way that in terms of park and open space and trails and so forth, Lehigh Valley's been fortunate to have an organization called Lehigh Valley Greenways, over, I'm going to say, about 15 years now. And this is the DNL National Heritage Corridor is involved, as well as, South Whitehall Township has been very involved in that process over the years, where working together, we've defined the top 10 trail gaps throughout the Lehigh Valley, and the Jordan Creek Greenway Trail being one of those, and that we constantly and continuously talk about ways to move each of these projects forward across the Lehigh Valley, and especially as they relate to these regional type trails that go one municipality to the next. And so, again, that group works all the time over a long period of years to try and coordinate and collaborate the best we can. That gets to, what the best locations are for these facilities, how they connect to facilities in other places, other municipalities. And so there's a great deal going on, kind of, I guess, behind the scenes in terms of park and trail and open space planning throughout the region that I think all the municipalities benefit from, and probably more so the ones that are there at the table on a regular basis, and South Whitehall has been there. So I think that's been a benefit that this township has had moving forward. So I would just add that.
No, thank you for putting that into perspective. I think especially as it shows up on that regional map where we're seeing one of the greenway really playing a large role in the regional connections, and especially to open space and activity. Looks like we, oh, sorry. I was just gonna say we got some input about Walbert Corridor, and if that can be more attractive. I don't know if whoever put that in would like to give us some of their thoughts as to maybe what aspects could be included there. And that was and just to bring us back, the Walbert Corridor is where LVPC kicked us off, right?
Yes.
And you're re-envisioning of, so we saw things like pocket parks, then, shared modes of transportation with Atlanta, and, walking and running and biking. So obviously the traditional concept of a park doesn't have to apply everywhere. You can think about smaller spaces for gathering and making, enhancing quality of life throughout the township. So that's definitely an interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
If I can interrupt, that was my suggestion, the Walbert Corridor. And I was looking at it in terms of maybe not making it look so urban, but keeping a quaint character about it. Keeping like mom and pop type shops, small retail, beautifying it with flowers. There's just a lot of different ways you could do it without turning it into a freeway or making it very urban. We want to maintain our feel of our township and not give that away. That's one of the things that draws people to us. But walkability, there are some businesses on it that I guess are vacant. Those buildings could be repurposed and beautified. There should be incentives for that. So I think that in terms of that type of thing, instead of building, developing, maybe sometimes we ought to just take a breath and look at what we have and repurpose it and make that into something beautiful as well. So, thank you.
And I would add to that in terms of the recommendations associated with the walk roll plan, just looking at walkability, the pedestrian aspect of that. Within the document, there are design guidelines and suggestions, but really to the point is to, it's not one size fits all. It's not the same recommendation regardless of where you are, but rather the plan looks at pedestrian types, whether those are major urban corridors or not, and provides different recommendations that would be appropriate to keep the feel of the place and to be appropriate for the type of place that it is, and not requiring it to be transformed into some kind of urban environment if that's not the interest and that's not what it traditionally has served.
Great. I think that probably transitions as well into how we can look at some of these problem areas in question 3, and which is what SME tools or best practices are relevant to addressing these problems. So I think Jeff got us kicked off there in a great way with the looking into walkability. Certainly would apply to a lot of the topics we've already discussed. So if anyone would like to kick this off, it could be someone from LVPC adding to an issue we've already talked about, or if any of the residents have questions about additional tools, they can put them up here, and we'll give everyone a minute or so.
I would just say one thing in terms of what we've already heard is that the township having a long-standing relationship with the school district in working together, because obviously the school district has a lot to do with community facilities and dealing with population growth and so on, and having that relationship with the municipality in terms of discussing the types of things that are going to happen with population growth and where that growth may occur, and how the school district can respond, as well as how the township can respond to the variety of needs, is a really encouraging thing.
We've had the coordination with Parkland. Oh, I think Hannah beat me to it. And I know I can touch on some other tools that were floated in our last meeting. I think specifically with getting people more aware of whether it be resiliency efforts or emergency responses, looking into recommendations that may encourage greater community coordination, maybe through community messaging systems, just any other tools or best practices you may have looked into for increasing awareness on some of the services we've been talking about previously.
That coordination and you know, um, to be able to not just build a relationship, right, but to maintain a relationship long term. So like with the Parkland School District, to be able to have that sort of relationship with the fire companies and EMS allows not just for partnerships now and in the immediate, but it allows for things to grow in the future. So, maybe Parks and Rec is having some sort of event, and because of the relationship with, that's built over time, one of the fire companies can go and they can use that as a fundraising opportunity as well. Things like that to support mutual support of community services. I would also mention, which is not specific to community services, but a scorecard or progress report sort of exercise, perhaps annually. So it wouldn't necessarily be a comp plan update, but a mechanism incorporated into the plan to kind of check boxes and check in and see how we're doing a year from when the plan's adopted, see where we've been successful, see where we've been like incredibly successful, and see where we need to keep maybe refocus our efforts. Helps to keep the plan relevant and refocus on the original intention.
I would just like to mention one of the sticky notes there in terms of thoughtful development and looking to encourage green spaces. We did talk in terms of future LV about the construction of kind of the area for development to occur. But in terms of the way that the overall plan is built, it's built on preserving natural resources as a first priority. And so throughout the Lehigh Valley, we define where those special environmental places are. And then the point of the plan is to try and preserve them to the extent that you can, either in terms of getting easements, conservation easements to preserve natural spaces, or simply the preservation of natural spaces through the land development process, so that that the whole piece of property that may contain some natural resources, perhaps through the design of that development approach can preserve the natural resources that are on that. And then that translates further into the preservation of agricultural space. And then is, again, in terms of the construction of future LV, it's really preserve natural resources first, look at where we can potentially preserve farmland, and then also kind of as the last thing you want to do is look and see how we can provide for development associated with the needs of the community looking forward. But we've already tried to accomplish those first two pieces in the basic building block of the future land use plan. So it all comes down to community priorities and how you view those different aspects of things and decide to pursue a land use plan that accomplishes those things.
There's definitely a lot to, I think, that will bring us into the final slide, which is when we start to about recommendations. I just so folks know, when we were having our discussion before we jumped into the jam board, a couple things that came up, and folks can tell me if they should stay up there or not, but the yes, so the survey, I wrote citizen survey, keeping it simple, and we also have surveys to assess community priorities. So that was just reflecting some of our discussion, just keeping in mind the official map. And we can definitely, as we go into the recommendations, pull up the official map and look at it more closely. And then I just did also add the hazard mitigation tools. Just again, things I pulled out from some earlier discussion. And if you do not agree, please feel free to speak up or use the pen tool and put an X over the ones I put up there, or just let us know, because those came from capturing some of our previous discussion.
Great. And yeah.
Oh, sorry, Chris.
I was just going to say some of the other ones that touch on previous discussion that I don't think we mentioned on this slide was, again, revisiting the plan, every 5 years, maybe even shorter. And then again, repurposing some of the land, since I know that the township doesn't currently have existing farmland preservation or other tools like that. So repurposing may be a tool that we can look to instead of preservation. Anything else you wanted to touch on, Hannah or anyone else here before we move on to the recommendations?
I think just if there's any additional thoughts from any of the residents or hearing from the township staff on reactions to this and how this moves us forward.
Just a kind of overall comment, the plans that LVPC brought or referenced are going to be a valuable tool to reference and incorporate into, the next phase of the plan. Livable Landscapes is, a county-based Parks, Rec, and Open Space plan. So having that information available to us is definitely going to help. And then also, I flipped through the hazard mitigation plan, and it's like 25 pages of South Whitehall information that we will certainly look to moving forward. So, those tools that they've provided, not to mention the other ones, are going to be super valuable. And thank you for bringing those to our attention.
Great. So I think we have about 15 minutes left. So I think it's time to start throwing up recommendations. And I think, just guidance for this is whatever comes to mind, because in the next meeting, we'll spend more time saying, all right, we put up this idea. What does it mean to build it out? And we'll spend some time I think as the facilitators, making sure we're also bringing and sharing tools like all the plans that were referenced by the SMEs from LVPC and others to direct your attention from today's meeting to our third meeting to get more acquainted with some of those documents. But at this point, it's just whatever's kind of coming forward in your mind that would be important to include as a recommendation under community facilities and the comp plan update. And I guess I would just ask LVPC folks, do you have any kind of words of wisdom for how to go about thinking, you know, taking it from these are our problems, these are the tools, how can a recommendation start to be identified?
I guess I'll go back to something Samantha said about, fact-based optimism. First thing you need are the facts. So, assemble those. You have a lot of resources available to assemble data and put that together, and then, take a look at that and see what that is telling you. We have an identification of what some of the issues may be moving forward, and we just keep one at a time going through those to see how we can assemble an overall plan going forward. But it certainly involves a lot of coordination and getting that data together so we understand what our current situation is, kind of like the hazard mitigation plan. What are our current capabilities to do these things?
And even if kind of what your thought is not a fully formed recommendation, I think some of those considerations, like what Jeff was putting up there, I think are also important to carrying forward with how recommendations are identified.
Just a comment that kind of popped into my head here is, if the hazard mitigation plan is updated every 4 years by the county.
Every 5, but
5.
yes.
So maybe every 2.5, we look at updating our portion of it for internal use so that, if things are changed or things change or come up, we're prepared to be involved in the county plan.
Well,
or
in terms of
coordinating.
that, there's actually an annual process of, led by the counties of looking at the plan that's been created, and it provides an opportunity to incorporate some amendments. And so, for example, with the plan just adopted in 2018, it was the first time that pandemic and infectious diseases was incorporated into the hazard mitigation plan. Who could have known how important that would be? But the fact of the matter is that because it was in the hazard mitigation plan and was never in the plan prior to that, so that that provided an annual opportunity for the municipalities to look at their needs as reflected through the pandemic and identify things that they could add to the plan in terms of actions. And that's a really important thing because if there ever is federal dollars available because of disaster declarations and things like that, that money can flow back through the hazard mitigation plan through the actions that municipalities have within their 25-page, I guess you referred to it, municipal annex that identifies all the things that, in your case, South Whitehall Township is interested in doing. And so the plan is that type of a living document where it is completely updated every 5 years, but even on an annual basis, it gives municipalities an opportunity to take a look at individual recommendations for individual hazards and actually supplement the document.
You did just see, I know, I believe it, yes, for Marcia Armstrong, having some issues with sticky. So Marcia, please feel free to drop in the chat or unmute yourself and we can capture some of your thoughts. We did get EMS fire needs to reflect new and changing housing development. There are other ones people either want to just throw out there or build on from what you've heard so far? And obviously, I think, a good resource and one to maybe reference as we go into the third meeting is the 2009 plan had multiple recommendations across a variety of areas in community facilities, and understanding if and what has been addressed, what should be reevaluated to move forward. And I think just again expanding on all these resources such as the hazard mitigation plan, livable landscapes. We haven't really talked about the concept of a parks and recreation plan, but that I imagine, and Dave or Greg, you can speak more to this, that would potentially be something under community facilities to consider.
So I don't know if Mike mentioned it at the first meeting, but
He did.
okay, they're planning on doing an updated Parks Rec and Open Space plan. Hoping to kind of get some information out of the comp plan to help inform what direction to go with that. So these recommendations that we're putting forward in this comp plan will translate pretty quickly to that Parks Rec and Open Space plan.
Right, and going along with what Hannah was saying with some of the goals from the previous plan, and based on our discussion today, like for example, I'm seeing coordinate with surrounding municipalities and other independent organizations, especially Park and School District, to provide joint recreational facilities and services. So I think that that's a great tool as we think about how we can build some new recommendations, is seeing what's still relevant. And that sounds like that's something that's still on everyone's mind. Greg.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, Chris. And there's obviously a lot of exciting room for innovation, and then there's also some things that I think will be carried forward. I guess just given that we're almost at our end of our time, one of the questions I had, especially for our SMEs, is how does a tool like the official map get updated? What recommendations for community facilities? I know we spoke to it generally, but can we think about that in relationship to the community facilities recommendations? And if any of the participants have thoughts on that, just something that's top of mind for me.
I would say again that as it relates to the official map, as we talked about, there are many types of community facilities that can be placed on an official map. Just taking one of them, where that was talked about tonight, where should park space be located? And so that there are a variety of tools in terms of kind of the historic population-based tools and service area tools and all those kinds of things to be looked at to kind of window in to see, where might the residents of the township not be as well served as perhaps other areas, and then we might look to see what we can do. And so that process could lead to trying to find opportunities for park locations that can be shown on an official map to begin to state what the township is thinking of in terms of future intentions for providing additional park space. And that can be used for easements of various types, conservation easements to preserve green spaces, agricultural easements to preserve ag land. And so these are all opportunities that municipalities have through the official map to, again, identify their priorities moving forward and to actually put on the map where those priorities tell you might be opportunities to better provide for the future residents or the existing residents, but provide future facilities for the residents of the municipality.
Hannah, earlier you asked if there was other municipal efforts we'd looked at that we could refer to. I think along those lines, Lower Nazareth at least once, maybe twice last year, updated their official map. And so that may be a good opportunity to take a look. I mean, they're definitely not the same sort of municipality as you all, but a good opportunity to look and see, you know, kind of what future things you can incorporate on your map and what others are thinking about now.
That's really helpful. I think just and we can make sure we source that before the next meeting. I do want to call out here, there was an interesting idea, land preservation, but also repurposing current structures for community facilities, i.e. a community center in a repurposed building. And that is a really exciting idea. I don't know if whoever put that up there would like to speak more to it, or if others would like to share their thoughts on that.
That was me, thank you. But I guess it just kind of speaks for itself. Just again, not being redundant, but I am being redundant. Just the use of a building that may be blighted and turn it into something that the community can benefit from, rather than building, developing, and so forth. I think one thing the pandemic has taught us is that we do need connectedness, but we also need our space. So I think the idea of repurposing is a good thing, and developing conservatively is also a good thing. We're really not quite out of this pandemic. We have a way to go. Fiscally, we need to be responsible, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for providing those additional thoughts, and I think it is a really interesting way of thinking about how facilities can be expanded through repurposing. And I'm sure that, you know, maybe Dave or Greg from the planning perspective and community development, how, you know, things like that are, you know, function under all the zoning and things we know and love. But something else that I just want to bring up here, a question was placed on the board. Lower Mac is planning for a solar farm. Is this feasible for South Whitehall Township?
Sure. I'm not familiar with how they're structuring it, if it's private or municipal. You know, and this kind of goes to land acquisition, buildings for community centers. You know, it when the opportunity arises, that's when you can do something about it. So having these things identified in the plan to give some direction once those opportunities do arise. You know, a lot of it is up to private landowners. And if funds are available for the township to purchase land and or, you know, buildings that could be repurposed into a community center. That's kind of the other piece of it. But again, having these recommendations moving forward, you know, we start to think about how to put those into play, and make those kind of things happen when those opportunities do present themselves.
And I'd like to just add to one thing that was brought up a little bit earlier in terms of not just an official map, but certainly on an official map, you can look at things related to connectivity. You know, if you're talking about open spaces, connectivity is something that open space planners are always trying to find, whether it's connecting a greenway to a park, to an agricultural easement, because, you know, nature likes to take advantage of those connected things, but people also like and benefit from those connected open spaces. And that's very, very important as far as trail and recreational facilities and how they connect to things like community centers and libraries, and, giving people the opportunity to walk or ride a bike to a lot of those different types of community facilities that you'd like them to be able to get to, and make it as easy as possible for them to do so. So connectivity is really important, just as a general statement in terms of, in my view, creating a comprehensive plan.
And I think that's a really great piece to bring some of the discussion points together, Jeff. So thank you. And I guess we would also, just as we are, honing in on 7:30, and we really appreciate all the time that folks have given us, I think first opening it up to those working group members from South Whitehall Township who have joined us. Do you have any closing thoughts or anything you want to share as we close out this second meeting? Also, feel free to drop it in the chat.
Mhm.
And if not from the working group members, I think from our SMEs, do you have any words of wisdom you want to drop for us?
Come on, drop some knowledge. I would just like to say thank you to the LVPC for sharing all the knowledge that they did drop tonight. Definitely provided us with a lot of guidance, resources, looking at these existing plans and incorporating those and some of the recommendations that come out of those plans into our plan moving forward. So thank you to the SMEs, and thank you to South Whitehall residents for attending and or watching the video. Thank you for being involved.
Great, and like Dave said, for those that may want to watch this recording, that'll be posted on the Community Facilities Working Group webpage eventually, along with all the rest of the meetings through this process. Even those that are here, if you'd like to add additional input to our discussion, or anyone that didn't get a chance to put any notes on the Jamboard, also you can navigate to this box that says Working Group Meeting 2 Discussion Questions. Just give it a click and it'll take you to a Google form, which has the exact same discussion template that we just went through. So if something comes to you tomorrow that you forgot to mention and you'd like to put it in, or if we simply ran out of time, you'll have your options to put things in there as well. Just make sure you click on community facilities so it goes to the right working group. And some of our additional resources and tools that we discussed today will also be posted here as they seem relevant throughout the process. So if there's not anything else, I think I'll just reiterate everything that Dave said, that we appreciate all the time from the SMEs at LVPC, and we thank all the residents for their input, time, and attendance. A quick reminder that our next meeting will not be next week. It's the following week. It's currently scheduled for Thursday, August 5th, 6 to 7:30, and that'll again be virtual. So if there isn't anything else, I'd just like to again thank everyone for coming, and thanks for your input. We appreciate it.
Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.